Panic Porcupine is a love letter to Sonic the Hedgehog, but more akin to what you'd see in a Kaizo Mario hack than a traditional Sonic game. The opening begins with a porcupine being tasked to stop a bad guy turning all the animals into robots. Probably sounds familiar. We learn that the citizens of this world were waiting for a legendary hedgehog to come save the day, but he never showed, so they're gonna have to settle for you. Fans of Sonic will instantly feel familiar here. You run just like him, and you can even curl into a little ball to slide down hills and gain momentum. This game is all about speed, and the levels tend to be much shorter affairs than what you would see in a typical Sonic game. Your goal is to zip through the course and collect these little characters. When you collect them all, the level ends. They're usually on a linear path littered with obstacles, but there are a few levels where you have to do a little exploring to find them all. Levels are littered with loops, hills, ramps, all the things you expect to see Sonic run through. And each level has its own theme, which comes with their own unique obstacles, like the circus world that has balloons that have you bouncing all over the place, very reminiscent of the Casino Zone's pinball sections in Sonic. This game is super difficult though. The levels are tight, generally short, but you will die over and over and over again trying to reach the exit, each time trying to perfect the perfect route and timing to make it to the end. And there's a lot of game here. 5 worlds with 10 levels apiece, each ending in a boss fight. The game is what you would get if you combine the speed of Sonic with the challenge and precision of something like Super Meat Boy. As a rule, I like to complete every game I feature on my channel, but I could not beat this one. I'm not great with fast games. I've always been more of a Mario guy than a Sonic one, and this game just completely decimated me. I got stuck near the end of the second world and decided that my old man reflexes were just not fast enough for what this game was throwing at me. Having said that, I was impressed with this game's speed, as well as the smaller levels which really encourage you to go fast. I feel like Sonic fans that want an insane challenge and love speed are going to love this game. It definitely is a game that nobody talks about. It does have a positive rating on Steam, but has less than 50 user reviews. It was not a game for me, but I wanted to feature it here because the main character had that goofy vibe that was all over animal mascots in the 90s. The Steam store for our next game, Bloody Paws Unleashed, describes the plot as a melodramatic werewolf who's on a quest to rescue his girlfriend. The werewolf recently bought his girlfriend a bottle of perfume. He comes home to find her missing and the bottle smashed on the floor. Using his werewolf senses, he catches her scent and follows her trail to wreak havoc on her captors and rescue her. The whole thing is really silly and even has a twist ending that would make M. Night Shyamalan jealous. In fact, the whole game is pretty silly. Enemy variety includes things like mummies using their bandages as jump ropes as they hop towards you to do damage, modern day witches that ride vacuum cleaners instead of brooms, among other goofy enemies. It's all good, silly fun, and really captures the spirit of what you might see in some of the cheesier games of the 90s. Gameplay here is more beat 'em up than platformer, but there are some platforming segments and some really tricky ones near the end. The game kind of gives off a Ninja Warriors vibe. You move along a 2D plane, enemies rush at you, and you have a variety of moves and combos to take them down. Combat is simple but addictive. It is really satisfying to smack enemies around, and while the moveset is not huge, you have the basics and they work well enough for what you need to do. The stages are broken up into several segments that end in a boss fight. Most of the bosses are pretty easy to take down, but a few of the later ones were tricky. You get 5 lives and no continues. Kind of. The game saves every level, and it saves the current number of lives you have when you entered that level. So if you get to a harder stage with only 1 or 2 lives left, you're stuck trying to progress on those 1 or 2 lives, making it almost better to restart the game and see if you can get there with some more lives in reserve. In between levels, there is a bonus game. It's timing based, and success leads to 2 extra lives. The game is not super long. Took me maybe an hour or so to finish, and I did beat it on my first try, but did have to replay the final level a few times. The last boss is really easy once you learn his pattern, but the last level is really tricky with some super difficult platforming sections. Overall, I enjoyed this game. It definitely errs more on the side of a beat 'em up than a platformer, but I wanted to include it here because there's a goofy charm that games in the 90s were famous for. And if you're a fan of side-scrolling brawlers with a touch of platforming, this is a solid game that you definitely will enjoy. Whipsy's Adventure is what you would get if Kirby devoured Simon Belmont, then got a new Super Nintendo game. You play as Pink Puffball Whipsy on a quest to recover the lost atlas from an evil wizard. That's about it as far as story goes. There's an opening cutscene and an ending with nothing else to detract from the core gameplay. This is a really cute game. All the enemies are cute, the bosses are cute, and the main character is even a slightly cuter Kirby. It is also visually appealing, with bright colors and really pretty environments. As the title implies, your character attacks with a whip, which could also be used to swing from certain points in the air. The whip sound has a really satisfying crack, and it makes it fun to smack enemies around with. It may be cute, but that does not make it easy. Your character has a generous life bar, so I rarely found myself dying from taking too many hits, but the knockback is real, and there were plenty of sections where enemies were positioned on small platforms, just ready to knock you to your death. We're not talking Ninja Gaiden hard here, but I did find myself dying more than I thought I would. This is a relatively short game. There are 5 worlds, each ends in a boss fight, and the whole thing will probably take you less than an hour to finish. But for the asking price of $6, it is definitely worth a playthrough. There is nothing here that is super innovative, but you get a really cute platformer that is well designed and fun to play. It's the kind of game that I want to revisit so often, just because it's so charming and fun, and its short runtime hits that sweet spot that makes classic games so replayable. I wanted to feature one 3D platform on this list, and Rise of the Fox Hero has that simplistic 90s 3D platformer vibe. You are a fox with a sword. One button jumps, one attacks, and that's it. There are no advanced movement options or upgrades here. What you get on the first level is what you have for the entire game. The hero is a little fox, who is probably one of the most poorly animated characters I have ever seen. His little legs scurry along as he walks, but the rest of his body is completely stiff. Depending on how you have the camera, it almost looks like he is gliding around the levels. There are 24 levels here. You have fruit to collect, barrels to smash, and 4 star coins to collect on every level. As far as I can tell, these do not do anything, and there is no story to speak of. No intro, no ending, nothing. You just get dropped into the levels, and there are counters to show you what you need to collect and what you need to smash. The level themes are pretty random here. There are 4 worlds with 8 total levels each, but there really are no themes to speak of. You might start off in a grassy field level, then be off in a volcano, followed by an ice world, and so on. There is also no difference to how the levels play out, so you are not sliding in the ice level or sinking when you walk on sand, for example. And the combat here is really simple. There's some enemies that shoot at you, but the ones who walk at you, you could literally just stand in place, swipe your sword, and eventually they'll walk right into it. It sounds like I'm being critical, and while there are definite criticisms here, I still had fun with this game. The gameplay is simple, but it's also kind of cathartic. You walk around, one-shot every enemy you meet, smash boxes, jump over things, and I still found myself wanting to play it. There are a few tricky parts, but nothing too crazy, and it probably is a game a younger kid might enjoy. It might even be a good introduction to 3D platformers for kids. It sells for $5, and for that price, gamers looking for a simple, fun world to explore will have a good time here. I want to feature it in this video because it harkens back to a time of simpler controls, graphics, level designs, and cute animal mascots. Super Catboy is a game I have never heard anyone talk about, and that's a shame because this game is a lot of fun. You play as a little kitty. There's an evil professor experimenting on puppies and turning them into military personnel. Your little kitty is an experiment too, and early on you meet Weapon Girl, who gives you a gun and provides moral support as you run through the levels to stop the professor and save the city from his army of rogue puppies. Yeah, the plot is pretty ridiculous, but it moves the story along. It gives you an excuse to run through a bunch of beautifully drawn and animated levels. The level diversity is really good. You start in a forest, and your adventure will take you through trains, mountains, airships, and so much more. There are even a handful of levels that break out from 2D platforming, such as minecarts and motorcycle chases. The controls are really responsive. Your kitty has some nice melee attacks, a gun with very limited ammo, as well as the ability to wall jump and dash. The melee here is just really satisfying. Every swipe of your claw leads to a nice crunch, and the gun sound effects are good too. It really gives the combat a nice oomph, which is always appreciated in games like this. The difficulty here is about average. You start with 9 lives and you get unlimited continues. There are collectibles in every level. You can grab coins and 4 pieces of a golden cat, which reward you with an extra life. However, each time you restart the game, your life counter resets to 9, for better or for worse. I didn't die too often, especially in the beginning, but later levels give a nice fair challenge. Nothing crazy. This is certainly not a game that's going to make you break a controller, but that's okay. Sometimes it's fun to just have a more relaxing experience, which is what this game is. That's not to say it's a total cakewalk. There are some tricky jumps and obstacles to overcome, but checkpoints are frequent enough and lives are plentiful, so you should have no trouble getting through. The combat is generally pretty simple. You run into two basic types of dogs. For the most part, ones with knives and ones with guns. The knife-wielding enemies are easy enough to take out with melee, whereas the gun-wielders can be shot, or you can just jump kick them and beat them up before they can shoot you. Later, enemies get a little more aggressive, so you need to rely more on your gun. Similarly, the bosses have a few attacks. Like in most games, you learn their patterns, find the opening, and they all go down pretty quick. I've really enjoyed my time with this game. The sprite work is amazing, the soundtrack is solid, the sound effects are great, and it's just a lot of fun to play. It's one of those games that just feels great to control. The levels tend to be short, although there are a good amount of them, so the game will take you a few hours to complete. But it's one of those games I just couldn't put down. I just wanted to do one more level, one more silly cutscene, one more boss, and I just kept saying that till it was over. Definitely is something you should check out. I picked it up for $4 on a Steam sale, but even at its full price of about $15, this game is well worth your time. Kitsune Tales is a platformer that takes heavy inspiration from Super Mario Bros. 3, and you will start to see similarities the moment you turn it on. Graphically, it has a style immediately familiar to fans of that classic. You have a world map where you can select different levels along with different icons that include mini-games, item houses, and Hammer Brothers-like enemies. Your character is a female fox with a look extremely familiar to Super Mario with his raccoon tail. You even have a little run meter at the top of the screen. Hey, if you're going to imitate a game, why not imitate one of the greatest games ever made? And Kitsune Tales captures the look and feel perfectly. That is not to say there is no originality here. Like any good Mario game, there are a nice variety of power-ups, and most of them are really original. You get a cool samurai who could stab enemies and make platforms on walls, a bird who could double jump and glide, and a little acorn who could smash enemies and bricks beneath her. There are lots more, and it was always so much fun to discover a new power-up. Level design here is great. You get the locales you would expect from a game like this. The level design is really solid and surprisingly challenging. I definitely died a lot more than I thought I would. There are easy modes which lets you instantly respawn and use power-ups mid-level, but if you play the classic mode, it definitely gets tough. Either way, you have infinite lives and decent checkpoints, so with some perseverance, you can make it through. There is a lot of content here. 6 worlds with 8 levels each, a second campaign with a new character that plays totally different, and a bunch of Kaizo levels for the hardcore if you manage to complete both. Kitsune Tales is a wonderful game that is a great homage to one of the greatest games ever made, with enough originality to make it feel like a lot more than just a clone. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. There are so many amazing games out there that fly under the radar. I release a video every 2 weeks trying to highlight some of these games. If there is a genre of game you want me to cover, leave a comment down below. And be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos and any more hidden gems.